Remember at the beginning of the school year when we talked about plot using a roller coaster? We are going to review that. So the plot is the sequence of events that take place in a literary work. That's just a fancy way to say the story. And the stories that we're talking about this week are fables. So in the exposition, this is where you're going to get the background information such as the characters and the setting. And then we start to go up to the rising action. This is where the series of events that develop the conflict of the story. Then we have the very top of the roller coaster, the climax. This is the turning point, the most exciting part of the story. And then we start to go down into our falling action. This is where the events after the climax take place. And then they start to lead into the resolution, which is the conclusion where the problem is solved. Okay, and then we also we can look at how the characters changed throughout the story. So we're going to go back to yesterday's fable, and we're just going to review the fox and the crow. As we reread this, I want you to think about which of these events in the story causes the crow to open his mouth to begin cawing or singing. The Fox and the Crow by Aesop. A fox once saw a crow fly off with a piece of cheese in its beak and settle on a branch of a tree. "That's for me, as I am a fox," said Master Fox, and he walked up to the foot of the tree. "Good day, Mistress Crow," he cried. "How well you are looking today! How glossy your feathers! How bright your eyes! I feel sure your voice must surpass that other bird's, just as your figure does. Let me hear but one song from you, that I may greet you as the Queen of Birds." So we're going to answer that question. What event in this plot of this fable caused the crow to consider cawing? It was the flattery from the fox. Why is it important to the story that the fox starts to compliment the crow? This is important because it leads up to our climax, and the moral of the story wouldn't happen if these events didn't happen. Going down here, the crow lifted up her head and began to caw her best, but the moment she opened her mouth, the piece of cheese fell to the ground, only to be snapped up by Master Fox. "That will do," said he. "That was all I wanted. In exchange for your cheese, I will give you a piece of advice for the future. Do not trust flatterers." So what effect does the fox's compliments have on this plot and on the story? It causes the crow to slip up and to lose her cheese. So what can the reader conclude about Fox based on these details? Remember, conclude means, so by the end of the story, what can you tell about Fox based on these details? We can conclude that he is sneaky, he is manipulative, he is not to be trusted, and he's selfish, right? So on the next slide, we are going to put these plot events onto a plot line. So here I have my plot line and the different events from that fable. So we are going to move the events onto this plot line, starting with, we're looking for our exposition. Remember, this is where we're introduced to the characters and the setting. So would that be, "I feel sure your voice must surpass that of other birds, just as your figure does. Let me hear but one song that you one song from you that I may greet you as the Queen of Birds. Thumbs up if you think that's our exposition. Thumbs down if you disagree. That would be thumbs down. What about do not trust flatterers? Is that something that happens in the beginning, very beginning of our fable? Thumbs up if you agree. Thumbs down if you disagree. Thumbs down. That did not happen in the beginning of the fable. A fox once saw a crow flying off with a piece of cheese in its beak and settle on the branch of a tree. Thumbs up if you think that is our exposition. Thumbs down if you disagree. This one's thumbs up. That is introducing us to our characters and setting. So we're just going to place it right here on the exposition box. All right, moving on to the rising action. This is where we start to get introduced to our problem. Would that be the crow lifted up her head and began to call her best, but the moment she opened her mouth, the piece of cheese fell to the ground, only to be snapped up by Master Fox. Thumbs up if you think that is introducing us to our problem. Thumbs down if you disagree. This one is thumbs down. That is not our rising action. What about, that is all I wanted. In exchange for your cheese, I will give you a piece of advice for the future. Thumbs up if you think that's where our problem starts to begin. Thumbs down if you disagree. That's thumbs down. How about, I feel sure your voice must surpass that of all of other birds, just as your figure does. Let me hear but one song from you that I may greet you as the Queen of Birds. Thumbs up if you agree that is our rising action. Thumbs down if you disagree. This one is our rising action. So we're going to drag that right over here to cover there. Next we have our climax. This is the most exciting part of the story. This is where we really get to the bottom of our problem, or the top of our problem. Would that be do not trust flatterers? Thumbs up if you think that's our climax. Thumbs down if you disagree. No, that is not our climax. How about, that was all I wanted. In exchange for your cheese, I will give you a piece of advice for the future. Thumbs up if you agree. Thumbs down if you disagree. Thumbs down. So that leaves us with, the crow lifted up her head and began to call her best. But the moment she opened her mouth, the piece of cheese fell to the ground, only to be snapped up by Master Fox. That is what happened in the middle of our story. It is what gives us the turning point of our problem. The falling action is when we start to see the problem come to an end. Is that do not trust flatterers. Thumbs up if you agree. Thumbs down if you disagree. That one would be thumbs down, because before that we have, that is all I wanted. In exchange for your cheese, I will give you a piece of advice for the future. That's our falling action. And then in the end, we have in our resolution, do not trust flatterers. That is the moral of the story. That is what the crow learned. So on the next slide, you are going to do the same exact thing that we just did, but with this story, this fable, Raven and Crayfish. This is the other one that we read yesterday. So you will go to this plot line and you will drag the events where they belong.